Representative Titus, let's start with the Supreme Court. Obviously, there have been several rulings at the end of the term for the Supreme Court. The big one is with regards with abortion. What discussions have you had with your fellow Democrats on Capitol Hill, not only about the decision itself, but maybe a response from the Democratic side?
Well, it's difficult to overturn anything the Supreme Court does. That's why this is such a monumentous, terrible decision. It was shocking that you turned back 50 years of constitutional rights, but not surprising given this court. There's a lot of conversation about creating haven states that have some protections for abortion and don't have those trigger laws that will automatically go into effect. There's some talk about allowing abortions on public lands, but I think that's a little more difficult to put in place. We want to be sure that there's funding for birth control in states where people might be going because they can't get an abortion at home. And plus, you'll need more birth control as you plan your future, given the uncertainty of what the court might do.
Obviously, in Nevada, it's in state law already. Is it best for states to handle this on their own and not have a court case as the basis, but state laws, whether it's in Nevada, California, or elsewhere? What is wrong with letting the states determine what to do with regards to abortion?
If you let the states determine it, you will have a patchwork across the country with some states allowing it and some not. That's not the way you're supposed to deal with fundamental rights. So it needs to be a national issue. Now, the court's taken this position. I think Congress needs to pass a law legitimizing abortion nationwide. The court might come back and strike that down too, but at least it would be a start to put it into statute, which is more binding than what the states are doing. I suspect you're going to see a lot of cases come before the court now trying to strike down state laws, including the one in Nevada that gives us some protection in the short term.
You kind of touched on this a little bit with regards to your fellow Democrats on Capitol Hill. Even if there was an appetite among the Democrats to try and do something legislatively in Washington, I get the sensation it wouldn't go very far anywhere else. So is there anything that can be done?
Well, yes, there are some things. We could do away with the filibuster. This will pass out of the House. It's in the Senate that it gets stuck, where it takes 60 votes. That's just a rule. It's not in law. It's not in the Constitution. You could get rid of the filibuster, and then you could move a lot of things like the PRO Act or some gun legislation or Equality Act. So that's one thing you can do. You could also expand the court like Roosevelt tried to do during the New Deal, but that will be more difficult, I believe.
Is that something you would support?
I would certainly look at it. If you expand the court, then the Democratic president could make some more appointments. It seems to me ridiculous that six people impose their own will and their own beliefs on the whole country when the great majority of people in this country support keeping Roe intact.
That's obviously the main decision from the Supreme Court. There have been some others today with regards to environmental law in particular. Just in general, what has been your reaction when you've heard these decisions come down from the Supreme Court? Were you surprised, angry? Try and articulate what you're feeling as a Democrat seeing these decisions come down.
Well, when it comes to constitutional rights, and that includes abortion, but it also includes equality, it includes voting, it includes birth control, same-sex relationships, all of those are now up for grabs by this court. And even Thomas said flat out, now we need to look at those things. So that is shocking and very concerning. Some of the decisions that they reached, the gun one, overturning a 100-year law in New York about concealed carry, it's one step forward, two steps back. That's totally contrary to the gun bill that we just passed. Rolling back EPA environmental regulations, the ability of the EPA to enforce some of the things involving clean water and clean air. I mean, what kind of decision is that as we face climate change? And then church and state, that's another one. Allowing private money, I mean, taxpayer dollars to go to support private religious schools. That's been in place for years, and it goes back to the founding fathers who made it very clear in the Constitution that there should be separation of church and state. So it's just a real unraveling of the progress that we've made in the last 5 decades.
Is it possible though that whatever someone's stance is on any sort of issue that goes before the Supreme Court, if you take the thought that their decision, their rulings are based on law, is it possible that it's just bad law and it needs to be litigated in a different way or in a better way?
Well, laws are never permanent. They can be changed by the next administration or by the next Congress or by the court. So that's one of the great assets of our government, is that it is flexible to keep up with the times. I mean, which founding father would have imagined you could have drones or have, wiretapping or things like that? So it has to be flexible. But these decisions that are coming down overturn long-standing precedent, long-standing. They overturn things that are supported by a majority of the people. They go against what the members of the court tried to portray when they were getting confirmed, to leave it vague so that you might be able to trick somebody like Susan Collins. For all those reasons, these seem to be going counter to the arc of history.
Final question: when you get back to Washington, obviously you're also in the middle of a re-election campaign. How much of an issue will these decisions be when you're on the campaign trail and your fellow Democrats on the campaign trail?
They'll be very important. Certainly they energize the base. Women are very fired up about the abortion decision. Environmentalists care very much about clean air and clean water, as does everybody, but they're the active ones. You know that the gun lobby wants to keep things out of statute, that like my bump stock bill that they didn't include in the Senate bill. But the other side, with the Gabby Gifford's group and the Brady group, they're going to be all fired up. So I think these are energizing issues. And if you look at me and my opponent, or Democrats and some of their crazy Republican opponents, you'll be able to present a real contrast to the voters so they can really make a choice.
Final question with regards to an issue we've talked with you about before, wild horses and the roundups, particularly in central and northern Nevada. Any update from your end on what has been going on with BLM? And I guess, are you frustrated maybe with the lack of an update from the federal government?
BLM is very hidebound. It's hard to get them to move, and oftentimes they're captured by ranching interests. There are several things going on. One, we're asking for an investigation into the entire program, because you've had horses catching respiratory diseases in the holding pens, and a number of them have died. So we want to look into that. Another thing that I've been very adamant and vocal about is the use of helicopters to round up horses. You saw the visuals of the little colt that was just chased down and died. If you have to round up some horses, hire a cowboy. They know how to do it, and it'd be a lot cheaper for taxpayer dollars. And then the third thing, we're happy about this. We got $11 million in the House Appropriations bill to continue to develop and distribute the birth control method among the horses. This is much more humane and much cheaper than rounding them up into holding pens that last forever.
Is there, and I know, again, you're up for re-election right now, is there a bit of a time concern that you have, not maybe with your own position, but just broadly, if Democrats lose control, hypothetically, of the House, any chance of something like dealing with BLM going forward might get lost?
That's true. Some of the Western members of the House from Utah and Wyoming, Montana. They have a lot of sympathy for cows eating public lands grass, but not much sympathy for horses. They say horses aren't native, but neither are cows. And actually, you can trace a horse's ancestry back to maybe they are native.
That's all I have for questions. I was trying to do the math of like native for horses. I appreciate the time, Representative.
Sure.
Thank you very much.